avant-garde.
All right, welcome to Torture Garden. I'm Jimmy,
I'm Scott.
and so we thought we'd take a little bit of a break this week from sort of experimental music. I mean, we both love Can, we love Coltrane, we love all those avant-garde acts, but we like a lot of other stuff too. And one of those things that me and Scott have really gotten into over the years that we really sort of bonded over was hardcore punk. So I figured, why the fuck not? Let's just let's talk about some of our favorite punk albums.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we put a couple caveats on this. Like we're mostly talking about just regular hardcore punk, not melodic hardcore, post hardcore, or like Dillinger Escape Plan, metalcore, Converge, that type of stuff. We're talking about like 80s things like that. We're talking about Black Flag. We're talking about Minor Threat. The guys that started it all.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And I think hardcore punk is one of those genres that's really taken off in a whole bunch of directions. I mean, one of the bands that we'll be talking about, I think, is really one of the most consequential bands in rock music in the modern era.
Who would that be? Misfits or
no? Minor Threat. Well, specifically Ian MacKaye. I mean, his work with both Minor Threat and Fugazi, it was incredibly influential for rock music.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it's interesting because to think that such a basic genre could then help evolve. I mean, like Jimmy mentioned, there's an insane amount of offshoots of both punk and hardcore punk.
Oh yeah.
There are so many different art punk, post punk, dance punk, and then
crossover
post
thrash,
hardcore, crossover thrash. You have so many different offshoots of just this simple formula, which I guess makes sense to an extent. You have a basic idea that you then jump off of.
Yeah.
But it's just really fascinating that this really simple, fast, intense music that I gravitated towards in when I was in middle school and early high school, and I thought that fantastic. It was just right to the point, short, aggressive, and it's been able to evolve with me. As I quote unquote my taste matures. All the more quote unquote adult genres, because I'm trying not to sound too pretentious, but like all like the more mature, artsy fartsy genres, really evolved from something that I had listened to that I thought was so simple and aggressive for a completely different reason. So I really, listening through all these albums, reminded me why I fell in love with hardcore punk and, why it's such a fantastic genre.
It's funny because, like, it took me a very, very, very long time to get into hardcore punk. Like, I always admired the ethos of it, like, ever since I was a kid. Like, that was always, like, my jam all the time, was, like, I loved, like, that idea of thinking for yourself and, like, sort of that, like, rebel type of mindset.
Yeah.
But every single time I listened to hardcore punk, I could never get into it. And, I mean, part of that was because I think, as a kid, I wasn't really, like, I grew up listening to, like, like, part of the roughest thing that my parents ever listened to was, like, ZZ Top. So,
yeah,
like, we weren't very, like, we weren't very, like, hustle and bustle when it came to music. But, like, when I started to get into, like, Metallica and stuff like that, like, those options sort of became more interesting. I think, actually, if I remember correctly, I think Minor Threat's complete discography was probably the first album I ever bought that was, like, full-on hardcore punk.
That was, I actually took that out of our local library, and that was immensely consequential for my listening. I didn't suggest that we listen to the whole discography for this. We'll get to which Minor Threat album I picked, just because it's interesting for the combination of. Are you getting a lot of feedback on your end? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I a little bit.
Do you want to edit that out, or do you want to start over?
I mean, I already put on the AC in my room. It's gonna be pretty loud anyway.
All right, so
I don't know. Like, we're doing it raw. You know what? Fuck it. We're doing it raw.
Okay.
We're gonna sweat this thing out. It's gonna be hot as fuck in my room. I don't care.
Okay. So do you want to count down and we'll start again? Or...
Nope.
Okay.
No, like, come on, okay. If we're gonna do a hardcore punk episode, we're gonna do it by the punk ethos, man. We're gonna do it raw. We're gonna do it DIY. No edits. No edits here.
Okay.
Lo-fi as fuck.
Okay, so with that, I think we should launch into our first album.
Yeah.
Jimmy, this was your pick, so why don't you jump on it?
What was the first? Let me just. Oh yeah, Circle Jerks, Group Sex, 1980. One of my favorite albums, personally. I think it can only be topped by the probably. There's another one in here that would top that, but I personally like, and people are gonna probably get pissed for this, but I probably prefer Circle Jerks to Black Flag. And I've talked to you about this before, Scott, but like I think Greg Morris leaving Black Flag was probably the best thing in punk music history to happen. And I don't mean that in a way to say that Black Flag is bad, because I actually really like Black Flag. It's just that, like, to think about what they did afterwards to get Henry Rollins out of State of Alert and into Black Flag, and then to get Greg Morris to form Circle Jerks, and then to have Black Flag do My War and like all this fucking weird shit. Like, I think it was a great, I really liked how it all turned out.
No, I completely agree with that. I personally prefer Black Flag to Circle Jerks, but
Yeah.
I mean, looking at the evolution of Black Flag, if you listen to Black Flag's early stuff, I mean, that's incredible punk. Greg Morris was a great vocalist. They wrote some excellent songs.
Most of which were re-recorded for Damaged.
Yeah, but I think that they also record a lot of new stuff, and it was interesting to see that even on, it was mainly side B of Damaged, but they really started to go in that experimental direction. Not to say that wouldn't have happened. Who's to say if Greg Morris had stayed? If they just stayed the course.
I don't know. Like I love, like, I think Group Sex is a great album. And I think Greg Morris is fucking awesome. But I mean, you can even listen to Off, which is punk from the 2010s, and even that doesn't really sound much different from Circle Jerks. Like it's like it's not very. I don't think he's someone with a lot of variety in mind. I think he sort of knows what he wants, and he just sort of goes gets it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I know that you said you had a copy of Group Sex on vinyl.
Yeah. So back. So I'm going to admit this now because I've gotten better. But I used to only buy colored vinyl because.
God, you're the worst.
No, I know it was terrible because I was like, if I'm gonna spend the money on the vinyl, then why would I not get, like, black vinyl is boring, and so of course that was ridiculous because there's a ton of records I have that are colored, which I'm like, okay, I don't even like this. I just like the fact it was a colored vinyl, and I've gotten better, and now I buy vinyl that is good music, which is what a weird idea. Anyway, I bought this because A, I knew it was a hardcore classic. And B, it was Seafoam Green, which is cool. So I see. I've gotten better, so I'm not afraid to admit this.
I'm just imagining you just taking it out of the record sleeve and just holding it up and being like, "This is all I need." just like sort of like spinning the record around in your finger, like, yeah, fuck that music. I don't need to listen to that. This is where the show's at.
It's actually really funny because I think colored vinyl is kind of like problematic, but that's a big topic for another day. Anyway,
yeah, that's actually a topic worth talking about, though.
Yeah, it definitely is. But when I put it on, it actually was a really fucking good record. I only bought it based on something so shallow, but it ended up being a really solid, aggressive punk record. It's not one of my all-time favorites, but it is a great album. I haven't listened to Wild in the Streets, but I really love that song. That's obviously on their, one of their follow-up albums.
Yeah,
So
I think, well, that's the thing. Like, as much as I love Circle Jerks, I think the later albums, they're okay. Like, Wild in the Streets is okay. Golden Shower Hits is okay. I think Black Flag has the better discography overall, but I really like Group Sex more than any other Black Flag album.
yeah, no,
Um,
I think that's a fair distinction to make.
yeah,
I mean, I personally, like Black Flag stuff in general, but there are some bands who I think have better discographies, but I like some of their
yeah.
albums. And of course I'm drawing every time I make those blanket statements, I always draw a blank about like what band examples to use. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. I have, so that vinyl copy I have, is it just made on, is that just pressed on one side, or does that have two sides on it?
no, it's two sides.
That's weird.
I think that if they did one side, it would be a little tight and they might run over. I don't know if they would be able to fit it all on one side unless it was like literally right down to the label.
It's a 10-minute album.
Well, actually, now that I think about it, they might be able to. Typically,
No,
I think typically on
they
each
definitely could.
is it really only a 10-minute album?
Yeah.
The rings make it look so. That's interesting, because it makes it seem like it's longer based on the. Huh. Anyway,
I'm sorry. It's 15 minutes. Like, wow.
I'm guessing since they had, like they have the space. I mean, they have two sides anyway.
Yeah.
And it. I mean, it is true. I mean, this isn't like some pretentious vinyl shit. Like, it is true that like the more rings you have, the quality goes down. I guess. I guess the closer you get to the middle, for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why, but I do know that it is legitimate that the more shit you put on one side. But anyway, I'm not.
Yeah.
So ironically, as a vinyl collector, I don't know that much about like vinyl.
Because you're a poser.
No, I like collecting vinyl. I think it's cool. I like that.
Because you like all the special colors.
No. It's because I like how it sounds, and I like the big pretty pictures, the big album covers. Okay.
I'm never gonna let this go. So. Yeah.
Ironically, I thought I was safe to admit that, but now I'm regretting it. But anyway, that's
yeah.
cool.
Well, it's because you're admitting it to me. Like, if you admit it to someone who wasn't a complete asshole, like, it'd be different. But like, I swear, we're gonna be like 80. I'll be like, hey Scott, you get any more colored vinyl in? Just.
Oh, jeez.
But anyway, Group Sex. There's so much I love about this album, but I think it's most in just the no fucks given attitude of punk that it comes out with. And I think that's not, rare at all in punk. But I just like the way they do it, because it's like, I think there are some political overtones to the album, but I think it's more like, in a way, they're like, fuck everything. Like, it reminds me a lot of Damaged in a way, because like that's some of the reason that's some of the stuff I get from Damaged is just like no, they not only fuck Reagan, fuck the entire world too. Like, and like, I mean, seriously, like you have a song, just I just want some skank. I mean, or rolled up my ass, or I love all those great tracks. Let's see. Oh, Live Fast, Die Young is great. Deny Everything.
Yeah.
Like, they're all great. Like, they're all below 2 minutes. Like, I just fucking love the album. It's and I really love the album cover too.
That's one of my favorite parts. Is
like,
I love
really
the design.
recognizable. Like, I always loved like the Circle Jerks logo and everything. Like, I actually I should buy a Circle Jerks shirt and wear it to school sometime.
Yeah.
to see how that goes.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, that'd be great. All right, well, I guess we'll move on. We'll talk about probably this quintessential hardcore punk album, Black Flag's Damaged.
Yeah, I mean, this was, I mentioned earlier that, Minor Threat's complete discography was one of the first punk albums, I took out of our library. Damaged was another one, and this, really started, Black Flag were one of my favorite bands, and it really, just.
They're still one of your favorite bands too.
Yeah, no, there's, and I've only gotten more, dived further into their discography and really seen what they've done, and having being able to listen backwards. There are some excellent, hardcore. Obviously, Rise Above is probably one of the most well-known hardcore punk songs ever.
TV Party Tonight.
TV Party Tonight is
TV Party is so awesome.
It's such a goofy, silly song, but I still love it.
That's why I love it so much, because it's just like it's just so stupid. Like I think that they sort of know how stupid the song is.
Yeah, exactly.
I just love that. Just name your favorite TV show, Dallas, The Jeffersons. Just I fucking love that.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's worth mentioning that we're actually talking about all these in chronological order, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the singles that are in here are chronological, because when it comes down to it, like Bad Brains' Pay to Come is considered one of the first hardcore punk singles. And same thing with like Black Flag had, Greg Morris was in Black Flag before Henry Rollins joined. So there's a lot of back history that we're not really covering. We're just going by when the album itself came out.
Yeah, and for some of these it's kind of impossible to do that, to go by, because they literally jump all, especially when we get to the Misfits later, spoiler alert. Well, they really were all over the map in terms of their releases. I think,
but part of the reason that it's so confusing is also because of just the whole DIY ethic of punk rock. Because when these hardcore scenes finally were starting to come up, it was all completely like it wasn't like there was some big record company that signed these guys. This was this was all like stuff that they did on their own, like all the punk zines, which ended up sort of opening up those doors between the scenes. That was all handmade by fans.
Yep.
And so I think, while I think that's really cool, it's also sort of hard to keep track of all of it and date all of it. Which makes Hardcore Tribal History is a great book to read. It's also a documentary too. So,
and I think unfortunately that's one of the downsides of hardcore punk, is the fact that it was a bunch of young, basically young kids or young teenagers who wanted to make some fast, aggressive music, and unfortunately some of them burnt out pretty quickly. Minor
or sold out.
Yeah, or they kind of went into like weird directions. Some paid off, like Black Flag. Others not so much. But Minor
Bad
Threat.
Brains.
What?
Bad Brains.
Yeah,
that's why I made originally, because I'm like, God, I love Bad Brains, but just like once I comes out, it's like, oh God, no.
Yeah, like Minor Threat, for example, has such a small amount of output, just because they were young kids who burnt out. Thankfully we got Fugazi after that, but just because they really were coming into their own musically, and I've seen it myself. A lot of my friends were in punk bands growing up in high school, and like they were around for maybe a year or two before their taste changed. They wanted to go do different things. They wanted to record different styles of music, and I think we saw that a lot with. I mean, there's a innumerable amount of early punk bands that even Sex Pistols. Like I'm not a big Sex Pistols fan, but they were very influential, and they burnt out very quickly. They literally have an album.
Yeah, but then then they go and do Public Image. So
yeah. But in terms of like that, really being an impetus for hardcore punk in the UK, it's interesting that they have such an impact based on one album. But
definitely.
But anyway, Damaged by Black Flag, like I said, is listening back now after hearing a lot their more experimental stuff, you can hear it, like I mentioned earlier, on the B side. You can hear some of the more experimental ideas. That are starting to come out.
Damaged 1 is I'm still surprised that even made it on.
Yeah, no.
But it's such a harbinger of things to come.
Absolutely.
Like that was what was that album that you made me listen to? That was like
Oh,
them basically
fuck.
doing like free jazz.
Oh shit! I forget. It's a great EP, and it's. I mean, nobody ever talks about it. Like I found it by accident one day, and I gotta look it up now.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah,
I
look it up.
I got this. The process of weeding out.
Yes,
Yep.
which is a great free jazz EP. It's something that I don't know why it didn't occur to me. You know, when you listen to Greg Ginn's playing, that's definitely something that influenced him. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
and it's. But I think that's one of the things I love about Black Flag so much is that they stood out in that regard. You know, they had Greg Ginn's guitar intricacies and whatnot, and their ability to be. I think what defines a great hardcore punk band, and all the bands on this list have that for the most part. They have something a little bit unique. They have
Exactly.
they have that hardcore
Exactly.
punk edge.
Yeah,
Obviously they write some great hardcore
but then they
punk.
do something different with it.
Exactly, and Bad Brains is their reggae stuff, which
Yeah.
I mean, when it's done well, I think it's fantastic, and then sometimes it's not.
Yeah,
it's not done so well, but
not always.
it's
but
and I think
yeah.
Damaged is such an incredibly iconic punk album. It's such a great rock album in the '80s in general.
Yeah, I think it's cool to see how much how much energy Henry Rollins brings into the album
Yes,
too. Because
absolutely.
nothing against Greg Morrison at all, or no, Keith Morrison. I always get him mixed up with Greg Ginn for some stupid reason. But Keith Morris does he brings energy, but I think Henry Rollins brought some just fucked upness to it all. Like this was like he just you can really feel his anger on it,
Yeah, absolutely.
and just like that pure unbridled rage, and just I really like that nasty edge that he brings to it all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then and it's really cool to see how things sort of them changing the the sort of changing their style of songwriting even throughout the album. I mean, partly because some of those some of those tracks were already made before, but Gimme 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 was I'm pretty sure it's an older
Yep.
track anyway.
Mm.
But at the same time, you still got you got Damaged 1 or you got Damaged 2, or they're all, I mean, they're all really cool. Thirsty and Miserable is really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still swear by TV Party because I just find that so funny. I just enjoy that song so much. I could probably listen to that all day and not be tired of it.
Yeah, no, that's a great song.
I can't say that about a lot of hardcore punk tracks, about the single tracks. So
Yeah.
definitely love it. And Six Pack is great too.
Six Pack's great. I love that bass line.
Yeah, actually. Oh yeah, but TV Party Nights or TV Party's bass line is really good. I think that's what we're saying is that there are some hardcore punk bands that I hate to make this, but I think Minor Threat in a way that you really hear the guitar work and you hear Ian MacKaye, but the rest of it is okay. But with Black Flag, you can hear all of it and it's all great.
Yep.
Every single person who's on that album is just really good at what they do.
Oh, absolutely.
So, all right, I think we talked about that. All right, what is next? Oh, Minor Threat. There you go.
Oh God, I don't. I'm gonna have to I have so much to say about this.
All right, let it fly. Go
Oh
for it.
man, this, just all the songwriting on this. I mean, Filler, Seeing Red, Straight Edge. There's just so many phenomenal songs on here. And
But we're talking about first 2 7-inches, by the way, just in case anybody's confused. But not that they should be, because it's not like Minor Threat had that much music. So
yeah, so they released. I mean, honestly, if you want to get into Minor Threat, I suggest just buying their complete discography.
yeah, I mean it's the same price anyway.
It's the same price, and it's essential because Discord is very the record label Ian MacKaye started is very much about affordability. So all their vinyl and CDs are pretty reasonably priced. And in general, I mean, their complete discography is the length of like a normal album. Because all their early stuff, the songs are less than 1 minute.
Yeah.
But this is just some ferocious. I mean, so much energy to talk about passion and aggression. I mean, there's so many great songs on here. Ian MacKay's vocals are exceptional. They do exactly what they need to do. It's just fantastic, and it's great to you hear the conviction. I used to be straight edge, and this is one of the reasons I was. I like a good beer now. I'm not. I'm no longer straight edge. I don't see as much of a need. For that.
You are vegan though, so you still have a little bit of that.
A little bit of that.
Yeah.
But no, I mean I think that then you have just talking more broadly, you go from this to their refined punk edge on Out of Step, which is on the complete discography, which they kind of took that sound and refined it a little bit, up the songwriting, and unfortunately they were kind of fraying at that time, so they broke up right after that. But then Ian MacKay went on to make Fugazi, which is an incredibly influential post-hardcore band. So really that's why I mentioned earlier that Minor Threat is such a consequential band. It brought Ian MacKay out to out into the scene to make all this influential music. I mean, if you want just textbook amazing hardcore punk, I really can't praise Minor Threat highly enough.
I would say that like Minor Threat is like probably, I mean, the quintessential DC hardcore.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously Bad Brains has a pretty big play in the DC thread of things, but I always felt like Minor Threat was like that was always like you can't think of DC hardcore or even just hardcore punk in general and not think of Minor Threat.
Yeah, I genuinely think like any list of like best of hardcore punk that doesn't have Minor Threat, I don't understand. Like I
definitely I love I mean like I said, like I think this is probably the first hardcore punk album I ever bought was the complete discography, and I mean I don't think I ever sold that album ever, because I just like every time I thought about it I was like I just can't do it to myself. Like I just love it too much. And like even though like there are some tracks later on that are like okay, I'm trying to think of which I think it was maybe Salad Days. Oh no, it's the Good Guys.
Oh, Good Guys Don't Wear. Yeah, that's probably my least favorite Minor Threat song. Good Guys Don't Wear White. It's pretty boring.
Yeah, exactly. It's.
But I think especially you can really tell they were starting to lose interest, especially Ian MacKay, based on the lyrics and his delivery. I mean, he really, you could tell he was phoning it on a lot of the older Minor Threat stuff. Unfortunately.
But oh my god, the title track, Minor Threat. That's probably my favorite Minor Threat track. Just I remember listening to them in like college, and just like that track came out of me every single time. I love the lyrics of it, and just like it's the energy. That's the thing with punk, is just it's the fucking energy that it makes you want to go out and crack someone's head open. It's so great. I'm definitely glad that we did this episode, because I love talking about punk. So
no, it was great to revisit, and another great song that really was a Stepping Stone, which I believe was on a compilation. I don't think it was on the original EPs, but it's this cool thing where it's like the volumes turn down a lot, and then they slowly turn up the drums, and then the bass, and then the guitar, and then it just explodes, and it's like hardcore romp. And it was like, for their age, I think they were maybe like 18, 19 at the time. They were pretty young. And some of the songwriting tricks and the production tricks they kind of threw in at their age and at that time were really neat. It was cool to see that they and it kind of spoke to, again, kind of we mentioned with Black Flag, whatnot. A lot of these guys, they're making pretty simple, aggressive, straightforward, short music, but it's looking forward to what they might do in the future. And like I said, Fugazi, really was an incredible step for Ian MacKaye to take, and what he was able to accomplish with that band.
I still haven't managed to get into Fugazi. I sort of hate myself for it, but like I just like every single time I try to put on like Repeater or put on Red Medicine, I don't know why it just does not resonate with me.
It took a while for them to click with me too, but when they did, I mean, they clicked pretty hard. I would say for me, if you're trying to get into Minor Threat, just buy the complete discography. Really, they're very, even the songs that aren't great are still like fine.
Yeah.
And then the songs that are great are fucking phenomenal. I would say The Argument, which is ironically their last album, is probably the best Fugazi album to start off with.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I've tried them all, man. I just have never found anything that I really liked, and I find it so weird because like I can listen to like like Mike Patton's like solo albums, which are just like him just basically throwing up on the tape, and like but I still can't get into Fugazi. I think part of it is because I've never been like much of like a melodic hardcore type of guy.
Yeah.
Like when post-hardcore was like like when like post-hardcore and pop punk was really making the time like back in like 2011.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand that. Like Falling in Reverse was like it was like a death sentence for me. Like I hated listening to it. So I think that I really hate to even compare the two because they really aren't similar at all. But I think the melodic edge that Ian MacKaye brings to Fugazi is sort of what turns me off sometimes.
Mm-hmm. No, I could see that. I think I mean, if you don't like it, you don't like it.
Yeah, but I always like to keep trying because you never know. Things change, people change. You're not the same person you were a year ago.
Yeah.
So it's always nice to give things a try because Fugazi is a band that I respect enormously and I've always wanted to like them. I've just never been able to. So, all right. You want to move on?
Yeah.
All right.
To I think what is probably your topic.
Bad Brains, self-titled. Without a doubt, my favorite hardcore punk album and an album that would be in my top 10 albums of all time, without a doubt. I can only think of like 2 other albums that would be in that list.
Which are
Florence and the Machine's Lungs. I know, weird pick. And maybe Faith No More's Real Thing.
That's an interesting combination of albums.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Maybe Torture Garden too. But yeah, I really like, and this is funny because when you had me listen to this, I remember I borrowed this album from you way back when we were both in college, and I hated it. I hated it so much. I couldn't get through the first track. Sailing On, like I was like, this is lame. Like that, and like these guys are supposed to be badass. Like what the hell, man? Bad Brains, more like lame brains, and like really bad jokes like that. I was pissed. And I think I gave myself a couple years. I listened to like a lot of Black Flag in between that time. I think at that time you were really into what was that Black Flag album? The really what is it? Oh, My War. Yeah.
Yeah, My War.
You were really into My War then. So
yeah.
And I didn't really like that one as much. So I was pretty much listening to Damage, listening to Minor Threat, and like things like that. And I think Negative Approach was, I think I was spending some of that at the time too. And like, I eventually grew into Black Flag or into Bad Brains, and but when I did, like, oh my god, I think what sets Bad Brains apart from the rest of these guys, aside from the fact that like the reggae influence that comes in. Is that these guys were, really knew how to play their instruments. It isn't to say that someone like Greg Ginn doesn't know how to play his instrument, but when you look at hardcore punk as a whole, like, it's sort of that, it's very, like a loose DIY sort of network, it's sort of amateurish, like, like the Germs, who are considered like, like probably the founders of hardcore punk, in a way. Like they never knew how to play their instruments at first.
Yeah.
But Bad Brains actually started out as a jazz fusion album, or like the people who are in Bad Brains, they originally like a jazz fusion band. They used to listen to like Chick Corea and stuff, and like, and then it eventually evolved into this. It was like so cool, and just the fucking solos on this album are so good. And whenever I want, like if I really want to thrash around, I put on Attitude and just let it fly.
Yeah, I mean this. Okay, so I have an interesting. I don't think chronologically. One second, let me look it up because I actually have never looked this up because I know it's not true, but I want to believe that Corthorn from Bathory, like the really influential black metal band, loved Bad Brains. Because
that would be awesome.
Their guitar tone, their riffing style, everything about them is just, it sounds like pre-Bathory. Like it sounds like these guys influenced black metal. I know they didn't because I don't think the timing works out yet, because this album came out in 82. I think Bathory came out in the late 80s. Bathory came out. He started in '83, but he said he basically, he just made a Venom cover band was essentially his focus. But anyway, even though that probably didn't happen, that's one of the things I love about Bad Brains so much, is the fact that, they have that perfect guitar tone, that perfect aggression, and kind of like you were saying. I mean, not only can they play their instruments in the the reggae parts they do, and the really interesting compositions and quasi interludes, because they're a little longer than interludes, but even though they can do stuff like that, their actual hardcore punk songs are just written so well and performed so well.
Blistering.
And it's interesting because you have as Jimmy said, these guys are based in DC, just like Minor Threat. I mean, Minor Threat, you have these 45-second songs that just kind of blister by. And you have Bad Brains, who, I mean, obviously none of their songs were overly long, but they were able to kind of match that aggression, even though they had longer compositions. And fuck, man, like I'm really glad. I mean, I knew you were gonna pick this. I know how much you love this record, but like you reminded me how much I fucking love this album. Like this is such a great album.
It's so good. I should have worn my Bad Brain shirt for this, even though nobody else would see it. Like it would make me feel better.
I mean, you're not a huge, you don't really buy band shirts that often, so like that actually. I remember back in the day, I forgot that I lent you that my copy of Bad Brains. But it was funny, like when you bought that shirt from Newbury Comics, I was like, holy shit, I should listen to them again, because like that's not something you do.
Oh my god, I love this album so much. Like I know every single part. Like I have listened to this album so much that it's probably like I have like every single track stuck in my head in a way. Like I know exactly how the album goes and everything. Like I don't even have to think about it anymore. It's I just adore it. I think it's I love how like melt your face off they are when they get like at that really like furious frenzy at the really hardcore
and tracks. I love
the reggae too in it. And I this comes from someone who generally does not like reggae. Like I usually can't stand it. I find it a little lazy. But I like how they do it here, that it's not like beat you over the head with it. But at the same time it does really well to contrast like that intensity with this sort of laid back approach too. Like it makes the softer parts of the album sound softer and makes the harder parts sound harder.
Absolutely.
I mean, in a way, it's sort of like how Torture Garden works, the album, because like it makes all these weird different changes through it, but at the same time you have this this sadistic streak running through it.
And on top of it, you have, I don't think you mentioned HR's vocals, but I love HR's vocals.
HR's vocals are great. Oh my god,
they're so unique and so I love.
Yeah, there really isn't a single thing I don't like about this album. I really wish that they had, made more than this. I mean, you can get Rock for a Light and you can get Black Dots, but those mostly have re-recordings of other songs, or like of those same songs.
I would say Rock for Light is a solid album. There's some good songs on that. It was kind of. It was disappointing. I actually got Rock for Light first from our local library.
Yeah.
And then after I bought Bad Brains, I was like, shit, that sucks, because I thought they sounded better on Bad Brains. I prefer the production.
Me too.
Performance.
Yeah,
but it sucked because I was like, oh, that stinks now, because now I can't listen to Rock for Light without being like, it kind of sucks that they just because they used quite a few songs. Like, it wasn't just one or two.
Yeah.
They used quite a few songs over again.
Yeah, they only had a certain they only had like a handful of songs that I think they just kept re-recording.
Yeah.
And yeah, the recording quality in Rock for Light, I am not a fan of that, but I think that comes from listening to like the self-titled so much that I'm just used to that type of production.
Yeah.
So but I'll put it on for if I want something a little different. But
yeah, and there were a few more interesting reggae compositions on Rock for Light. So there's also that. But I think if you're looking, I mean, really, this is such a there are some artists where it's difficult to say which album you should start with. I mean, if you listen to one Bad Brains album, make it the first one. I mean, if you have to pick like 3 hardcore punk albums, this should be one of them. I mean, this is such an incredible album.
Yeah, I do wish that How Low Can a Punk Get was on this, but
that's a great that's fair.
That's a great track. But I still think what's there is really great. I mean, it includes Pay to Come, which, like we've said, is often considered the first hardcore punk single ever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's debate among punk fans who the first band really was and what the first single really was, but that's one of those contenders. So
yeah,
fuck, and I don't know. I dig Dead Kennedys is next, and I don't know. I might like Dead Kennedys more than Bad Brains, but I think I still like that self-titled album more than anything else on this list.
Yeah.
But because Dead Kennedys were probably the first punk band that I I individually got into I think with Minor Threat, I think you had somewhat of an influence there for me of getting into it and sending the Black Flag, but Dead Kennedys was pretty much me. I just checking out punk.
Yeah.
And listening to was it Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, their debut, that was a game changer. And then I remember specifically that I had money from Christmas. I ended up buying just a handful of albums. There was this Israeli rapper. I remember that I got her album. But then one of the other albums I got was Dead Kennedy's Plastic Surgery Disasters. And I have never given that album up because I love that. I love this album, especially because it includes In God We Trust Incorporated, which was an earlier EP.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like you said before, each hardcore punk band brings something different to the table that makes them unique. And I think out of all the bands, I think Dead Kennedys are the most unique.
Oh, absolutely. That's actually something I was gonna mention.
Yeah, just because of East Bay Ray's surf rock influence. It's full of reverb and noisy as hell, and then gets atonal at points. And, it's such a distinct sound. And then Jello Biafra on vocals is there will never be another vocalist quite like Jello.
He had such a unique sound.
I mean, it's not I can't say that it's aesthetically good because it's not.
It's fun. It's enjoyable.
Yeah, it's fun. That's the thing. It's the energy that he brings is really fun, and even though a lot of their stuff is very serious about, at least their political, their politics were very serious.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like Nazi punks, fuck off.
I love that track so much.
So good.
I like that track because I think it goes even beyond political in a way. Because like like the first line, punk ain't no religious cult. Punk means thinking for yourself. I like that, and it's because it's not like, I think they're talking about white supremacy in hardcore, but at the same time they're also talking about the way that hardcore punk, which is supposed to be, sort of like a lifestyle, like in a music that was revolving around, youth and energy and individual thought. It ends up becoming a herd mentality very quick, like very, very quickly. And I think they're sort of calling out people on that. And I love that, because I don't think enough people talk about that, as even though people like to think punk is so, individualist and everything, it's really not, in a way.
I think that's the one of the most interesting things about punk music is that, obviously that there's white nationalist black metal, there's kind of racist music in every genre, but with punk, it's very interesting how there are two very clear. I mean, you have very liberal or kind of radical in one direction punk bands, then you have like skinhead punks and whatnot. It's very interesting to hear like both are pretty common, just stereotypes when you think of like a punk band or whatever.
It's worth saying, sorry to interrupt you, but that skinhead was originally not meant to be like a white supremacist term. It was something that originally just came out of the punk movement. But it became so associated with white nationalism that it became that.
Yeah, but I mean, today it's very much. For example, the excellent movie, Green Room. Speaking of, have you seen it?
I actually haven't seen that, but I've seen the trailer.
Great.
It looked interesting.
Great movie, and what's interesting is that they're a punk band that's touring, and they end up at this complex run by skinheads, and
and Patrick Stewart.
Well, he's the head of the skinheads, and they're Nazi punks, and so they go on to play their set, and you hear them like talking beforehand about something, and you're not really sure what. What they're going to do, and then the first song they play is Nazi Punks Fuck Off, and the crowd does not like it, and it's a really, really funny scene, and then they move.
I'm going to have to watch this now.
Oh, it's a great movie. I could talk on about this movie, but anyway, so Dead Kennedys, personally I actually prefer Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, and I think a lot of their other singles are on the top of my list, but I mean, you can't go wrong with Dead Kennedys. I mean, this is another exceptional punk band. Really iconic. Probably one of the most iconic logos in hardcore.
Oh
punk.
And well, I would actually argue that Black Flag's logo is probably more popular.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's just because it's much more iconic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not to say that not to put down Dead Kennedys, because that definitely like. You definitely see that symbol and you know what it is.
Yeah.
But that Black Flag logo, I think, is a little more powerful. But yeah, I definitely like. I was thinking about maybe Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, but again, I don't think it's a bad album. I really like that album. I think there's some great tracks on it. I mean, Holiday in Cambodia is great. That was probably my first introduction to Dead Kennedys. Was playing that in Guitar Hero way back in the day.
Hell yeah.
But I think what sort of pulled Plastic Surgery Disasters over Fresh Fruit for me was just sort of the intensity. Like, I think it's much more wild, and it's just it's a dark album. Like Fresh Fruit has some dark places in it too. I mean, Kill the Poor opens up the album, but. Like, Plastic Surgery Disasters gets like really dark in places, and especially like the parts that are from In God We Trust, like those intro and outro tracks are like fucked up.
Yeah.
And then just I like just the way the entire album goes just feels like it gets darker and darker as it goes on, and just and then the way Jello's voice sort of adds to it all with that that weird tremolo in his voice. And,
Yeah.
it just it just like Government Flu, and just, oh my god, it's just such a weird album, and I just love it. Like that Riot's a great song.
Yeah.
Just it's all about just I always remember that there's this one line that's like now you can smash all the windows that you want. I love that line. I just think that it embraces hardcore just a little bit more than Fresh Fruit, because I think Fresh Fruit was you could hear that surf influence. And I think you can hear it a lot. It makes up Plastic Surgery Disasters too, but I think adding to that the politicism of it and the darkness that I think they bring into this one, I personally think it's a better album. I think it's a little underrated because most people will usually I've looked in so many best hardcore lists, and Fresh Fruit is always there, and I'm it sort of sucks because Plastic Surgery Disasters is still a really good album too, and I just wish it got a little more attention. What's that other one? That compilation of singles or B-sides that they had, Give Me Convenience or Give Me Death, that's worth checking out too.
Absolutely.
Actually, my first Dead Kennedys experience was not Holiday in Cambodia, but it was actually playing Tony Hawk as a kid and hearing Police Truck for the first time. To the point that my dad wouldn't let me play the game with the volume on because of that song.
Oh, because he didn't like it, or?
Well, I remember that there's some lyric that's on a bass, it's a kick in the ass, and it's boom. Yeah, he's no. So, yeah, I definitely I love the energy of this album so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say that about all of them, but I think the distinct energy that they bring into this album is really cool. Yeah. Just fucking Dead Kennedys, man.
Such a great album.
They used to be before I really got into Bad Brains. They were probably my favorite hardcore punk band.
Yeah.
And I mean, I almost bought everything that they had. I bought Frankenchrist a long time ago, and it was very disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever listened to that?
No, I really only listened to this, and I actually own Fresh Fruit.
Yeah.
But other than that, I haven't really dived in.
Yeah, Frankenchrist is a little weird. There's this song called the Chicken Farm that's just I can't get that song out of my head sometimes because just Jello's vocals on that are just so fucking weird. Or I don't know, it has punk moments, but sometimes it sort of slows down and it just gets a little weird. And not necessarily in a good way. But anyway, besides the point. And let's talk about our before
that, there's one, I'm trying to find it, but there's something I've been wanting to, here it is. So, I don't know if you know this, but Jello, Biafra, he collaborated on an album and an EP with the Melvins, which I didn't know when I was looking more into the Melvins. I'm a big Melvins fan. I was looking through the discography and I was like, who the fuck is Jello? Because I didn't know that was his name, Jello Biafra. I was like, what the fuck is that? And then I saw that it's, lead singer of Dead Kennedys. I don't know what the album sounds like. I don't know if it's on Spotify. I didn't check it out. But I think that's really interesting. So,
have you, aren't Melvins signed to Alternative Tentacles?
For that album, yes, but previously they have been signed to Boner Records, which is amazing. Ipecac, Atlantic. Yeah, actually, no, yeah. So they released, just that one album on Alternative Tentacles, but they've primarily been released on Ipecac. And then Boner Records is when a lot of their, Ozma, Bullhead, Lysol, all that came out. They released Houdini on Atlantic Records, which was their big breakthrough, and they released a few others on Atlantic, which was cool. But anyway, they're a great band, and so are Dead Kennedys. So listen to both.
I honestly, I've never really been much of a Melvins fan. They're another band like Fugazi that like, like I respect the hell out of them. But I've just never been able to find an album that I really like. And I think on top of it, Buzzo really, really annoys me. Like he just, I don't count this as a good thing because I think we need to learn to separate the artist from their art. But I've just always hated his attitude and just sort of the way he does things.
He's kind of a dick.
Yeah,
he's most of the interviews I've seen him in, he's been kind of obnoxious. Unfortunately,
he's just I'm very cocky and. Yeah.
I'm actually a big Melvins fan. I really, really love the Melvins, but he it's really unfortunate because I love their music. I actually think his vocals sound like kind of a combination of Rob Zombie's different vocal styles.
I could see that.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. When I first realized it, I was like, "Who's this guy sound like?" And I was like, "Rob." And I was like, "No, that's a weird comparison." Then I was like, "Fuck, he actually does sound like Rob Zombie." But I know I'm a big Melvins fan. I think they do a lot of really cool stuff. But anyway, they're kind of adjacent to hardcore punk. I mean, they took a lot of influence from Black Flag and helped form sludge metal. But anyway, we are coming on our final album, which is interesting because
it's the earliest technically.
What?
Because it's technically the earliest.
Yes. So the weird thing of this is the Misfits' Static Age, which is arguably their most acclaimed and their most popular full-length album. And it's really bizarre because a lot of the songs in here came out as singles, and this as a whole was recorded in 78 or 76?
I think it's 78.
78, and it eventually was released in 1996 because I believe it was just issues with the label. They couldn't reach a deal or whatever. So it's kind of interesting that the influence they had still remained because there were so many singles from this that were Bullet was released early, Last Caress was released earlier, and they preceded a lot of what we're talking about here. Even like the EPs from Minor Threat, which came out pretty early, those still came out in the early 80s. And I think Black Flag's early stuff, their EPs came out in the late 70s too. But Misfits, I'm a huge Misfits fan. They were one of the earliest inspirations for pop punk, I think, just because they really introduced a lot of melody to their writing, and then later on.
I can see that.
It's not a direct correlation, but it was one of the, they had their hardcore punk moments, but they also, Glenn Danzig had a very noticeable melodic voice, and they can write, a mean hook. And then, of course, you have bands like The Descendants and whatnot that really started to spearhead, and Bad Religion and whatnot that really started to influence pop punk. But anyway, I fucking love the Misfits. I think the Misfits are one of the best hardcore punk bands. It's unfortunate they had such a turbulent kind of go around. They really had a weird trajectory of things, and unfortunately, they've significantly gone downhill. They after Glenn Danzig left, they released 2 albums in the 90s with a singer called Michael Graves. Those are both really good.
Yeah, you got me into those. You actually got me into Misfits in general.
Yeah, but those are great albums. And then Jerry Only, who's the bassist and one of the main songwriters, released like a 50s cover album, which was like pretty fucking bad. And then he's released at least one album and an EP. I haven't followed them at all, but it's just watered down Misfits. But it sucks because what they did do was really infuse. They had some pretty straightforward, aggressive hardcore punk. They had a lot of influence from, kind of like Dead Kennedys a little bit, from rockabilly, from like surf rock and whatnot, and especially like 50s like doo-wop and stuff. Glenn Danzig in his vocals, and especially some of the stuff, were very influenced by that era of music.
Definitely.
And they wrote some killer songs. And I think something else is they just had a lot going on, because on top of all that, their lyricism was like horror punk, which is interesting because I usually have an issue with genres that are specifically just about, lyricism. Like, it's literally the only thing that makes it that way is just their aesthetic. It's not anything about the music. But I think they do incorporate. I mean, obviously they have a song called Halloween, which is really good. But yeah, I mean, Last Caress. I mean, Static Age is really. They have some compilation albums out. Legacy of Brutality and whatnot, and they have Misfits. I think 2 full-length compilations. But Static Age just has so many fucking great songs. I mean, you have Some Kind of Hate, Last Caress, Hybrid Moments, Teenage from Mars, Angel Fuck, Hollywood Babylon, Attitude, Bullet, like Jesus, like it's just such a stacked album of like it's like a greatest hits compilation without being a greatest hits compilation. Like there are just so many fantastic songs on here. I mean, the hooks are amazing. When they really want to go into that hardcore punk mode, like with Bullet, they can really hammer that home.
You know what the funny thing is about that is that like I've listened to all the other Misfits albums except for Static Age.
and like, that is interesting because I think this is probably the most quintessential, just straight up Misfits album, and the rest kind of diverge in different directions.
If I remember correctly, the first album you gave me was Walk Among Us.
Which is interesting.
Which I think Astro Zombies was like your favorite from that.
Astro Zombies is a great song, and then Skulls is a great song. Mommy, Can I Go Out and Kill Tonight? Yeah,
I love that track. And then I think it was Earth AD and Wolf's Blood,
and that's their just straight up hardcore punk album.
Yeah, and then you got me into the Jerry Graves album, or what's his name? Not Jerry Graves.
I think it's Michael Graves.
Michael Graves, yes. Fucking Saturday Night. We were talking about this early before we started recording, but I love Saturday Night. That is like without a doubt my favorite Misfits song. So I got into like American Psycho and Famous Monsters and stuff like that. I never listened to Static Age, which I guess I'm a little bit of a hardcore pleb. So.
But what did you think of what you heard from Static Age?
I really liked it. It was a nice change of pace from the other hardcore bands because I think that there's definitely like sort of a sense of humor running through it, and even though it's intense, it's not as intense as some of the other ones, some of the other bands. Like I would say I would almost put Misfits more in like. If we're gonna do like a little spectrum thing with like punk rock on one side and hardcore on the other, I think they're like maybe a little more towards punk rock.
Yeah, because especially on this album. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's slowed down a little bit, and it's more about like horror. It's all about those horror themes and like messed up shit.
Yeah.
Which I mean is very still very hardcore, but it's different enough. Also earlier. The song Halloween, Dead Kennedys has a better song named Halloween. Just saying. Plastic Surgery Disasters has that song, Halloween in it, which is fucking great. So that's
okay. Well, that's fine. We all have our little opinions, Jimmy.
Nope, not opinion, fact. No.
Oh wow. Okay.
I really liked. I liked listening to this. I really should buy some Misfits sometime. Like next time when I'm actually able to afford music again, I'll probably end up buying some. But yeah, I definitely forgot how much I missed listening to them after listening to it today. So
yeah, no, I mean they just had some great songwriting. I always. I don't listen to Misfits that often anymore, but every time I do, I'm like, "Fuck! This is why I love these guys so much."
Yeah. So, before we cut it off, we were thinking of a couple because we wanted to talk about these albums specifically because they're some of our favorites, but there were some that we didn't really get to talk about because either they didn't fit the list as well, or we just didn't like them as much. But we still want to give them some credit. So, Scott, what do you have for like honorable mentions?
It's interesting because I really do think, I was actually trying to look at some newer hardcore punk, and it's hard because I really do think there aren't as many straight up hardcore punk albums that I love anymore. Like I feel like for me, most of the bands I follow that take influence from hardcore punk do like a little bit they take it in a different direction.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I've mentioned throughout, the various other albums from the bands we talked about and how I would really recommend those as well. I think another band we haven't mentioned, maybe Cursed. Cursed is
I was thinking of that. Cursed is great.
Is a Death Wish band. It's kind of a good way to put it. They fall in the vein of Converge, but kind of do they're a lot more hardcore punk in their approach.
It's still the only reason I didn't include them was more because it feels a lot more like metalcore.
Yeah, it definitely is on that line for sure.
Yeah.
I'd also
still really good though. 2 is a great album.
Yeah, so. It is. I also want to this is another one that kind of verges more in a different direction. But Husker Du Zen Arcade, obviously, the founder, his name escapes me. Let me look it up.
Michael Hart?
Grant Hart from Husker Du passed away as we're recording this, and it was really unfortunate. And Zen Arcade verged more on post-hardcore. It kind of started to evolve their sound a little more. But I mean, that's a fantastic album as well. This also verges more into post-hardcore, but Refused: The Shape of Punk to Come.
That's actually on my list too.
It's a phenomenal album. It's the last good album they released, but that's okay.
Agree to disagree.
Oh, jeez. Okay, we'll just move on. But I think Refuse: The Shape of Punk to Come is just such a classic album. So much aggression, so well written. The complete opposite of their new album. Anyway, so I think I also love No Means No, Wrong. A lot of these albums are on the line or kind of dip their toes in both post-hardcore and hardcore punk. But No Means No, it really had somewhat of a weird approach to hardcore punk, and their album Wrong is really, really good. Really good album. From there, a lot of the picks I had kind of, they lean a little bit more in the non-hardcore punk direction. So those are really the main ones, I'd recommend, as well as digging into, we kind of picked the highlights from these various bands' discographies for, the 6 main albums we talked about. But they're absolutely worth digging into for like their whole, everything they have to offer. So that's really what I have to offer. And Jimmy?
Yeah, well, I think first is it's worth mentioning like some bands that don't necessarily fit into the hardcore, schema as well. Like Dillinger Escape Plan, Converge. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 bands that we are both. You really like Converge probably a little more than Dillinger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're both fantastic.
I'm sort of the opposite, but I mean I love them both.
Yeah.
If we were just talking about hardcore in general, not just hardcore punk, I would definitely include both of them.
Yeah.
But I felt like we should talk about them sometime because they are 2 of my favorite bands. Don't Escape Plan's arguably my favorite metal band ever. There's not a single album of theirs that I don't like. But anyway, if we're going to talk about more hardcore punk stuff that could have made this list but didn't, I think Rancid's And Out Come the Wolves is awesome. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite punk albums. It's more in the like ska punk sort of range, but I still think it's a great album. It's a long album, but I really like. It makes me happy. Like it's one of those albums I can listen to and I'm like I just come out of it feeling so much better.
Yeah.
Off, which is Greg Morris's new band. Their first 4 EP compilation is really good. Wasted Years, their second album's good. I haven't listened to their first album, self-titled, but I assume it's very much like those 2. There's actually this really good various artists compilation that Discord did that I have that I really recommend. It's called Discord 1981. This year in 7 inches. It has 2 Minor Threat EPs on it, Teen Idols, State of Alert, Government Issue, and Youth Brigade on it, and they're all really good. Just really nice like DC hardcore from way back. Fucked Up, David Comes to Life.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like probably not an album that exactly fits the criteria, because it's a little bit more melodic, but I really like. I love David Comes Alive. That's another album that just makes me feel happy whenever I listen to it.
Oh, it's such a great album.
Yeah, even though it's another really long album. Like, it's really long. You already said Refused. Discharges, Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing. I thought that was going more into like D-beat. So I didn't bother mentioning it.
Yeah.
Even though it's still a really cool album to listen to it. Descendants is Mild Goes to College. It's a great album too. Suicidal Tendencies is first album, their self-titled album. I adore that album.
Yeah.
Like,
That's a great one.
Yeah, I really like that one. And then DRI is Dealing With It, which is more like crossover thrash, sort of. Those are mine because Suicidal Tendencies would have actually made it onto the list if it wasn't for Dead Kennedys. I was going between them for a while.
Yeah.
If I just decided on Dead Kennedys because I was like, walking, listening to Plastic Surgery Disasters, and I'm like, there's no way I can include this. Like,
yeah.
But the Suicidal Tendencies debut is really, really awesome. It's blisteringly fast, and just like their lyricism might be more fucked up than any of these other ones.
Yeah.
Maybe Misfits, but that's just because Misfits, has stuff about killing babies and stuff like that in it.
Yeah, it's a little messed up.
Yeah. So that's what I have.
I think to just pile onto that, you reminded me of someone I hadn't thought about for a while, but is fantastic. Because you said Rancid, Operation Ivy. I think they're fantastic. They really were monumental for ska punk.
And Boston hardcore too.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when you think of ska punk, you always think of horns. And Operation Ivy had not one. I think they had one song with horns on like their big compilation. But they're a great band.
You know what? I got them mixed up with I think Negative FX. Operation Ivy's from California. Yeah. Stupid.
And then he went on to make Rancid. Tom, I don't remember his name. But
Tim Armstrong,
whatever.
Yeah.
Tom. That
is a really good band. Rancid is pretty great. They're just a nice album to listen to. It's just like, I don't know, like I don't consider it like as hardcore as the other ones, but it's still really good.
It's still a great album for sure.
Yeah.
So we have talked a lot about hardcore punk.
Yes, we have.
I didn't even realize though. But any final words, Jimmy?
Check these out if you're interested. Hardcore punk, while it's not in the same place it is today, some might argue that's dead. I don't agree with that. I think it's just changed forms. Very much.
Absolutely.
And sort of split into different modes and things like that. But I think that it was nice talking about this. It's nice talking about some but more regular rock music for a change. Not I love experimental stuff, but it's always nice to just talk about music. So,
no, absolutely, without question.
But what about you? Any last words?
It was great to revisit this stuff. I mean, I haven't listened to some of these albums for a while, but these were monumental for evolving my tastes. I mean, I don't think I would have really made that jump into metal if it wasn't for hardcore punk. And I'm a huge metal fan.
I actually I tackled things from the other way around. So, but I love me some hardcore punk. So
and it was great to revisit, and I loved kind of walk down memory lane to some albums that were very formative for my listening. So
all right.
This is great, and I appreciate everyone listening to us kind of ramble about albums we love.
All three of you. All right. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Torture Guard.